How in the world, this is the document. I want to enter this in for the record if it hasn't already been entered, Madam Chair. The document that you provided on thread 3, this is a huge file. How in the world did you smuggle this out of Russia?
Carefully.
In your socks?
And I don't think I want to be really specific about it because I might have to go back there and get some more sometime. Although, no, that'd be crazy to do that. Well, I took the top pages off that were stamped with the security signature, and I carried them out on my person. But the rest of them, I just threw in my suitcase and threw some caviar in there as a distraction as well, and hoped for the best. Otherwise, I'd be a citizen of Siberia right now.
And you had you reported James Lakatsky came to you with government possession of NHI craft and how they ultimately gained entry. Can you testify to the veracity of that claim?
Dr. Lakatsky is an honorable man who served most of his career with the DIA, a very trusted, high-level rocket scientist and intelligence analyst who inspired the OSAP program, as I said earlier. And in full disclosure, I've co-written 2 books with him. He dropped this on myself and our other co-author out of the blue. And it took 14 months for us to get DOPSR approval for him to release 2 sentences on that. He said this craft, we had managed to get inside of it. It had no wings, no rotor, no tail. It had no fuel tanks. They didn't know how it flew or how it was operated. It clearly looked like it was aerodynamic, but he would not go further. He's a by-the-book guy, and until he gets clearance to say more about that, I don't think we're going to hear much more. But it's not ours. It wasn't ours. We didn't make it. We didn't know who made it and how it was built and how it operated. We've got at least one, and I don't know. I think that's enough confirmation that we do have recovered discs and materials.
Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. That was George Knapp, who is the chief investigative journalist at KLAS TV in Las Vegas, Nevada, as well as a longtime UFO investigator. He's someone who has investigated the Bob Lazar story since the 1980s, along with a lot of other different UFO incidents. He's been investigating this for a long time, and I thought that his performance at this hearing was fantastic. I really did. I thought that he brought a sense of logic, facts. He brought a lot of facts. He was speaking of these things the way they need to be talked about. Now, the difference here, I think, what made it special is the fact that a lot of the witnesses that we've been hearing from during these hearings over the last few years, a lot of them are military witnesses, and they're not as used to public speaking as someone like George Knapp, who's been doing this for a long time. I mean, he started investigating UFOs in 1987, as you heard him say in that opening little segment there. But you heard him talking, and he brought the way he laid it out. Everything he was talking about was just laid out matter of fact, and that's the way this subject needs to be handled. That's why George Knapp is, someone I highly respect. He just tells you how it is, what he thinks about it. If he doesn't know something, he doesn't know it. But he does what he does know, right? Is that there is a cover up, right? He's done enough investigation over the decades now. He understands there's a cover up. All the different people he's talking about here. He was talking about Dr. James Lakatsky there. I mean, this guy was a rocket scientist and an intelligence analyst. Talking about what he was talking about there was opening up a craft. They figured out how to open up a recovered UAP, right? That's what they're talking about there. It's just amazing stuff that just being talked about, discussed during this hearing in a matter-of-fact way. And that's, to me, that I think will have over time. People pay attention to this hearing, right? And people play, actually, I'll give credit to the mainstream news for this, because there's been a lot of them that have been playing a lot of segments, important things. And I think when people in the public, people who don't really think about this subject that much, when they hear someone like George Knapp talking about this in a matter-of-fact way, it should open some eyes up, you would think, right? But let's play another clip from his opening statement, where he was talking about those the other thing he was talking about in that beginning was those Russian documents that he smuggled out of Russia, the UFO documents, and he was also talking about that during his opening statement. Check this out.
I want to move on now to the Russia files, because that was going to be sort of the central impetus of what I was going to talk to you about today. Back in the early 90s, I got into Russia, met with a number of their defense officials, Ministry of Defense and others, who confirmed for me that Russia had been doing the same thing the United States had been doing, that is secretly studying UFOs while publicly saying something completely different. The documents and interviews that I obtained and have now shared with this task force show that the USSR launched what is almost certainly the largest UFO UAP investigation in the world. The first phase of that was an order was sent out to the entire USSR military empire that every unit, you see anything strange in the sky, a craft, an orb, something unusual, you had to gather all the evidence, collect testimony from the witnesses, look for physical evidence, and all of that information went into one program at the Ministry of Defense. Thousands and thousands of these reports came in. A lot of them were first routed to the KGB, but then back to another program that came after this collection effort called Thread 3. And Thread 3 was an analysis program. We have provided to the committee the documents of what they were trying to do, and essentially they were trying to build their own UFOs. They were using the information from their observations and studies to try to figure out that technology. The guy who was in charge of that program, Colonel Boris Sokolov, told me that their goal was to basically develop technology that would be superior to anything we had based on what they learned from UFOs.
In the next segment, he's talking about the reasons. He's asked by Representative Crane, well, why is this being covered up? And he offers legitimate reasons why. And he also says a lot of things that I believe I've been talking about here on the show. A lot of people in the UFO community have been talking about. Just listen to this.
Mr. Knapp, I've watched many of your videos on Joe Rogan and other places. One of the big questions, I think, for many of us is, why do you believe that the federal government refuses to be transparent about this issue?
I think there's probably multiple reasons. At the start, when these things first started invading our skies in large numbers, we were scared. It was right after World War II, and we didn't know what they were, and they didn't want to panic the public, and that was probably a good call. Over time, I think the lying sort of became institutionalized. You know, flights over Washington, D.C. in 1952, they're seen, they're captured on radar, jets are chased after these objects, and then we get an explanation it was a temperature inversion. And those kind of lies have been told for a long time. What was told to me by an investigator from Congress, a guy named Richard D'Amato, who was sent after this story by Robert Byrd and Harry Reid. He came out to Nevada, tried to get into Area 51, did get in there, looked around, talked to people, trying to get to the bottom of it. He believed that this program, reverse engineering, et cetera, was inside, had been moved inside these corporations. And he said, when this comes out, people are going to go to prison. And he meant people who were basically misusing legitimate national security funds, tens of billions of dollars, in order to keep this cover up going. I also believe there's a legitimate reason for the cover up, in that there is undeniable connection of national security involved in this technology. If we are racing for it to master that technology against the Russians and the Chinese, which is what I have been told by Senator Reid and many others, then it is a race that's critical to our survival. There could be a form of disclosure, I think. Yes, it's real, it's from somewhere else, without revealing all the details that would allow someone else to have an advantage in the race for this technology.
And that's exactly it, right? I mean, the government, they're keeping the entire thing covered up, the reality of the situation. That's what he's basically saying. But they could tell us something, right? Yeah, I've been saying this on the show. Other people have been saying it on, in their books and in other podcasts and in other documentaries. Like, the government does need to keep certain aspects of this secret, the reverse engineering aspects, because obviously the Russians and Chinese are doing the same kind of thing, right? So that stuff needs to be secret, right? I get it, but I think at the same time, you could make a presentation to the world and say, yeah, guess what? We're not alone here. There's something else with this, and they can give us something. You just can't keep this whole thing bottled up. So this made a lot of sense to me.
Mr. Knapp, how do we know that the files that you obtained from the former Soviet government are not BS and just given to you as a disinformation campaign against the U.S. government?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I shared some of them with the Senate Intelligence Committee when I first got back, because that was requested by the Russians, who shared some of that information with me. Secondly, I gave all of that material to the DIA through BASS, the OSAP program. Sorry for the acronyms.
Can you name names real quick? Sorry.
At BASS or OSAP?
Who did you give them to directly?
I gave them to Robert Bigelow and to Jim Lukatsky. And they hired a whole team to go through them and retranslate them and analyze it. And they created a structure of how the UFO programs in the USSR and Russia were put together. They said they were real. The other person who said they were real is David Grush.
And there you see, under questioning from Representative Anna Paulina Luna, who was the chairwoman of that task force hearing, he said that, yeah, they're doing it too, right? He reinforced that notion that the Russians, the Chinese, they're all aware of this, right? Everybody's aware of this, except for most of the people in this world, apparently. Most of the people in this world are being lied to, and they're being lied to for a long time. And now here's another segment where he's talking about the importance. He was getting questioned by Representative Eric Burleson with regard to whether or not they're going to these bills. There's a Whistleblower Protection Act on the table, as well as the UAP Disclosure Act, which basically hasn't passed yet the way it should have been. I mean, there was a version of it passed a couple of years ago, and then last year they tried to do it again. Nothing really happened, and now here it is. They have another chance to do it this year. Let's see, is something going to happen? He doesn't know. He says it's a daunting task. Check this out.
Let me ask this question. Are you familiar with the Witness Protection Act that Representative Burchett has filed? It's fantastic. It's the language that we need. It's language that will protect whistleblowers from any kind of reprisal, and yet it's again and again blocked by this body in some way. Many a times it's being blocked not by elected officials but by staff behind the scenes. And the other bill, the UAP Disclosure Act, which was filed last year, Senator Schumer, who I cannot believe that there's a topic that he and I agree on, but he and I agree on this topic. He has sponsored it in the Senate. He put it on the National Defense Authorization Act last year. Remarkably, I can't get it it was stripped out by the House last year, and I can't get it onto the bill leaving the House this year. Mr. Knapp, how far would that bill go to actually getting the answers that we need?
Pretty far. I think that they're still going to have roadblocks. The keepers of the secrets, the private companies that have been doing this job for intelligence agencies for a long time, are not going to cough it up. You'd have to force it out of them. And whether you can get them to admit that they have it or not, I mean, they're supposed to lie about it. They've been lying about it. More power to you. I hope it works. I hope it passes this time. But it's a daunting challenge to get them to open up after lying about it for more than 75 years.
Now, under the next segment we're going to show here, he was getting questioned by Representative Andy Biggs, and it was about how do you verify whether these people are telling you the truth or not. He explains what he does, how he does that, and he also went on to slam the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO, particularly the former director, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, who is basically who Anna Paulina Luna, by the way, pointed out at the very beginning of this hearing, is a documented liar. The guy is a documented liar, and you'll hear George here talking about this, about the stuff, the nonsense that Kirkpatrick has been saying. Toward the end of this segment, he brings that up. But there were whistleblowers like Bob Jacobs, who in the 1960s saw something, and evidence that he saw a UFO shoot some sort of a laser at a dummy warhead and knock it out of the sky, and then he was told never to talk about it. And he went to AARO with this, and basically it never went anywhere. And then Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, as we all know, he went on that disinformation tour. I love the fact that George Knapp just comes right out and just tells the truth about this situation, just lays it out as a matter of fact, that this is what people need to know in this country. People need to hear this in this country. It's very, very important. And then you'll also find interesting is that Anna Paulina Luna then, or actually Andy Biggs says something to Luna about, what are we going to do about this? And she says, hey, maybe it's time that we subpoena Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, and that's met with a round of applause. Check it out.
You've interviewed numerous UAP whistleblowers over the years. Question is, how do you verify their claims before deciding they're credible enough to report on?
It's a combination of factors. First, you check their credentials. Did they really serve where they said they did? And did they work where they said they did? Are there any other witnesses? Is there visual proof, film, footage, things of that sort? You ask the people around them that know them, that used to work with them. If they're credible people, that's one way. I think about AARO, the organization that this body created to deal with witnesses and whistleblowers. I hope I'm not taking too much of your time here, but they invited people to come forward, service members who knew, saw things and had experiences. And I can tell you that the people that I have talked to who went through that are deeply disappointed. There was a guy named Bob Jacobs, who was a lieutenant attached to Vandenberg in 1964. His unit would record missile tests. They recorded all of them. On one of these particular tests, a UFO comes out of nowhere, zaps what looks like a laser beam at what would have been a nuclear dummy, a nuclear weapon, and disabled it. And he is called into the commander's office. Two guys in suits clip that film footage out that shows the UFO, and he's ordered to never talk about it. He comes forward to Arrow. He heeds the call, thinking he's doing his duty as an American to tell that story, and they completely dismissed him. They made up a story that they had tracked down the original footage, and there was nothing like that in it. Well, there was no original footage. It had been taken away the day the footage was recorded. He's deeply disappointed. People like Bob Salas, who had worked at a nuclear ICBM base, who saw UFOs flying over the base, and these missile silos were taken down. He went to Arrow too and was completely disregarded. It almost looks like Arrow operated as a counterintelligence operation to get people to come in, tell their stories, and then discredit all of them. I can't imagine that any whistleblower or witness will ever go to Arrow again because of what happened under the first director, who's now long gone, but still seems to act as the spokesperson for that organization.
And I would say, Madam Chair, maybe at some point we need to really dig deep into Arrow, and I would encourage us.
Oh, I'd be happy to send maybe a subpoena to Mr. Kilpatrick.
There you go.
In the next segment, George is questioned by Representative Nicholas Begich with regard to, he's asked, okay, to name some names, and he does. He was talking about Lockheed Martin as one of the contractors who is part of this cover-up that is keeping this information from the public, but apparently they're under orders. But he does provide a name as well. And then Begich also asked him about, what's the long game with this, and what's the government's plan, or do they ever plan on releasing this, and what do they think about the people and all that kind of stuff. And then he also asked questions with regard to the executive branch. What's their part in this? And you'll find some interesting responses from George here.
Are any of you willing to name specific gatekeepers within the root cell of the UAP-SAP Federation?
You mean specific people and contractors that have dealt with this and kept the secret?
Specific individuals.
Well, one of them was named Dr. James Ryder at Lockheed. But, again, to emphasize, I don't fault these contractors for doing what they were asked to do by our government. They're supposed to lie if people ask about it. And the intelligence agencies who gave this stuff to them, CIA, I think primarily, told them to keep it quiet. And they've done that. And I suspect that they'd like an off-ramp.
What is, in your view, having investigated this issue for so many years, what is the long game with respect to disclosure of this information to the public? Because with the advent of essentially a video camera and a high megapixel phone in everybody's pocket, at some point, this information is going to be impossible to withhold from the public. What do you think is the long game here?
Well, the secret's out. I mean, how many videos have there been already? Videos that are leaked from within the military and intelligence agencies and contractors and sensor platforms. It's out there, but they have the high ground. The people that don't want us to take it seriously dismiss it, discredit the witnesses, come up with a cover story. I mean, it's been out there a long time. The public senses that it's real, and the people in authority dismiss them. It's a game that's been going on a long time, and I don't think they're ever going to release it. I think that there's an attitude among the people that have been involved in this for a long time that the public doesn't deserve to know, and that the public probably can't handle it, but they can.
Describe your understanding of the org chart or lines of control within the executive branch with respect to these topics.
I think these programs are in the executive branch, National Security Council, and over on that side. That seems to be what some of our witnesses have told us over the years. So you can, Congress can file all kinds of requests. The FOIAs can be filed with the Department of Defense, Department of War now, and they can honestly say, well, we don't have it, because they don't have it. And I applaud the committee for trying to tackle this monster of an issue. I really appreciate that it might be the only bipartisan issue in Washington where everybody can agree. We've watched multiple hearings now. Everyone is asking the same kind of questions, whether right or left, and honestly want the answers. And Chairwoman Luna, I appreciate your dedication to this, Tim Burchett and the other members for sticking with it, because it's come up in Congress before and they had hearings and then they dropped it for 50 years. So it's going to take a lot of time to get to the bottom of this. And I applaud your commitment to getting to the truth.
See, the one thing that I want to point out here with this is that, yeah, they think, like I'm saying all the time, they think you're stupid. That's what he's basically telling the people here, and he's telling them it's a matter of fact. The government thinks you're stupid. Governments of the world think you're stupid. That's what they think. They don't think that you can handle it or something. They can handle it, but not you. And I'm so glad George said this during this hearing so the whole world could see this. It's fantastic. This is the kind of stuff that we need in these hearings. We need truth bombs like this from people who know how to deliver them. And George Knapp most certainly delivered truth bombs in this hearing.
Between Russia, there was an agreement between Russia and the United States that if they were to see some unidentified objects over sensitive sites, that they would report it to each other. Are you familiar with that document?
Yes, I'm also familiar with the public rhetoric between President Reagan and Gorbachev at the time, too, that they traded statements about, wouldn't it be something if we were threatened by something from way outside, how we might work together. I know for sure that they had conversations about it, and I know we did reach an agreement to try to lessen the possibility that us detecting a UFO or group of UFOs would not be mistaken for a bunch of Russian missiles. There were exchanges of that sort that went back and forth.
Yeah, and I can imagine this is, to me, the validity of this document is underscored by the fact that Russia would not want this to be known. They absolutely would not want to know, the public to know, or the United States to know that there was a vulnerability in their missile systems. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And, and we had many similar incidents at our nuclear weapons facilities here that have all been sort of swept under the rug, but it's pretty scary when you take down 10 missile silos during tense times and you don't have a better explanation for it than it was a special test of security mechanisms or using EMPs, which is a preposterous explanation.
Right there in that segment there, what he was referring to was the 1967 Malmstrom incident and the ridiculous explanation that came out of Arrow recently, an explanation that was touted by the former director, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, all over the internet, all over different podcasts during his disinformation tour earlier this year. Yeah, basically what they tried to say, Arrow, they tried to say it was that it was some sort of an EMP device that they were testing there at Malmstrom back in 1967. That incident, of course, involved UFO showing up over that base where there were nuclear missiles stored, right? And all of a sudden, all the missiles went offline while that UFO was there. There were people who saw the UFO, and then when it flew away, the systems came back on. Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick and Arrow were trying to tell us now that it was some sort of an EMP device that was being tested there that shut all the missiles down, but they didn't tell any of the personnel at the base, which is totally absurd, as George points out here. Another story, another thing that the world needs to know, the public here, the American people need to know about these lies that have been getting told for all these decades, and that continue to get told by certain elements within the Pentagon. There's just no question about it. And here he talks in the upcoming segment, he's going to talk about some other the Russians, some of the stuff that he learned in his investigation into the Russian UFO incidents and their military. Listen to this. This is very interesting.
As I mentioned at the beginning of my remarks, what hooked me on the story was the paper trail, these documents that shouldn't exist. We've been told for decades, over and over, there's nothing to it. It's not a threat. You can go about your business. And then when FOIA becomes the law of the land, thousands of pages to the contrary leak out. There's a memo by General Nathan Twining in 1947 when the country was being overflown by dozens of UFOs, hundreds of UFOs, in which he said, look, this is not visionary or fictitious. It's real. These things are craft. They're not ours. They outperform anything we've got. I mean, if you follow the paper trail of documents that they wrote before the military got wise and realized that FOIA really exists and changed their tune and not put things in writing, it spells it out pretty clearly. I'll go refer back to Russia. One incident I did not mention to Representative Burleson is Colonel Sokolov in that Ministry of Defense program said there were 40 incidents where Russian warplanes were sent to intercept UFOs. and they were ordered to fire on them. And for the most part, the UFOs would zip away. 3 of the pilots, though, did fire at these things. Those 3 planes stalled out, crashed. 2 of those pilots died. And after that, the Russians changed the standing order. If you see a UFO, leave them alone. No country in the world wants to say and admit that these objects are flying around in our airspace and there's nothing we can do about it. I mean, who wants to say that? The U.S. certainly doesn't, and the Russians didn't either.
In the next segment, you're going to see Representative Tim Burchett question the witnesses, and you'll hear Dylan Borland provide the answer first, and then George Knapp will chime in. It's with regard to, are they basically lying to us? Is the government, ARROW, are they lying to us about extraterrestrials here being real or not? And you'll hear Borland provide a response to that. But then George, when he talks about it, he makes a point that I like to make, a lot of people like to make, and I think that one of the reasons why in a lot of these new bills that they've been putting forward over the last few years, they call it non-human intelligence rather than extraterrestrial, because I think it could be a game of semantics here, because nobody really knows, right, where they come from, right? I do believe, right, that they're probably coming from planets. That's why I wouldn't be calling my show Extraterrestrial Reality. However, if at some point, if it's shown, hey, they're not coming from there, they're here the whole time, they're living under the ocean or something, I guess I'll have to say, well, change the name to creatures who live under the ocean reality, intelligent beings from under the ocean reality. I don't care about that. Like George Knapp points out here, it's just a placeholder for now. But I think a lot of people believe that in the end we're going to find out that these beings are coming from other worlds. But just check out this exchange that he has between him and Tim Burchett and also Dylan Borland.
Knowing you testified to ARROW, are they obfuscating when they claim to have discovered no evidence of extraterrestrial beings, activity, or technology, and are they lying to the American public?
As I said before, it's a manipulation of the public perception. The statement, scientific evidence of extraterrestrials, is a true statement. It is not the truth about what is happening and what we have.
Did y'all like to comment on that further? Mr. Knapp, you're getting edgy.
It's splitting hairs. No proof that they're extraterrestrials. What would that proof look like? A piece of kryptonite? What would it be? I mean, we could be talking about different forms of non-human intelligence. I think the dominant paradigm is that they come from outer space somewhere else, and they have some way that they can cross those vast distances that we can't even imagine doing. But that's not necessarily the answer. So asking for proof of extraterrestrials might not be the answer at all. It's splitting hairs. We don't know where they're from. I don't know anyone who knows the answer for sure. They call them aliens just as a placekeeper kind of a word, but no one in all these programs who've studied this stuff for years, people with much bigger brains than mine, knows the answer for sure.
Another point that needs to be made is every time, we say we're going to back engineer or whatever you want to call it, these craft, I always say, like, it'd be like if you took I ride motorcycles, but if you took like an Indian or a Harley to the people that came over here on the Mayflower, they'd see a bright, shiny object. They might polish it. They might get it started. I doubt they could. They couldn't work on it. They couldn't put fuel. They wouldn't be able to have the capability of putting fuel in it. I just think that's we're scratching at something that we don't have any knowledge of. And that's why it's just taken so dadgum long. But they do know, first one that cracks that code, it's over. I mean, it's energy, it's power, it's everything. And I worry too that in the wrong hands that they do that, they keep it from the rest of us because they're so invested in whatever energy sources we have here that their billionaire buddies are going to profit, and they can't retool. Because they know once it's out on the internet, it's over. And so I think there's a lot of things going after. And I think that's why the move to discredit folks is so rapid too. I think, they point to them and they put the dogs on them. And it disgusts me.
There's a price to be paid for that too. The Russians and Chinese are trying to figure this out as well, but they don't have the same kind of stigma. They tell their best scientists and engineers, get in there and work on it. And they've been doing it for a very long time, might have a head start on us. Here, we don't have our best scientists and engineers working on it because they've been told it's nonsense. The stigma is very real for people like that.
Now, what he just said there should be very concerning. The fact that these other countries, right, China, Russia, they're taking it seriously. Their scientists there are taking this subject seriously, apparently. When you think about what's going on here, right, They don't take it seriously because the whole thing has been stigmatized. That's another great point by George Knapp. But I'm going to close it out here with his comments. He made some. This was a section from his opening statement where he just talking about what got him into this, what made him realize that there was actually something going on here, that the government's been lying. Check this out.
But the public has been told over and over since the late 40s, there's nothing to worry about here. These mysterious craft seen by millions of people in the skies, in the oceans, over the land are not real. They're not a threat. The witnesses are wrong. They're crackpots. Don't believe it. That changed for me. What got me hooked is the paper trail. Documents that were squeezed out of the U.S. government after the FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, became the law of the land. And those documents paint a much different picture than what the public, the press, and Congress have been told over many years. The documents from military and intelligence personnel behind closed doors admit that, quote, these things are real. They're not fictitious. They can fly in formation. They're evasive, and they outperform any aircraft known to exist, including ours. The public, of course, as I said, has been told something much different.
Well, there you have it. George Knapp delivering the goods at that UAP hearing. For sure. He comes off, he's very personable. He's a genuine person. I mean, he was just throwing out truth bombs. He was making logical statements. He was using common sense. Everything that he was talking about there, everything makes sense. It's like, it's understandable to regular Joes out there. It should be anyway. And that's what I think, that was another important aspect to this hearing. We did that first part where we were talking about the video that was released. That was spectacular, and I'm going to do one more part to this. It's going to involve the statements that were provided from the whistleblowers. We're going to talk about that in the next show. I just think it was a great hearing. Again, like I believe to this point, this is the biggest one, the most significant one we've had to date. Hopefully, maybe the next one will surpass this one. But as of this moment in time, I do believe that this is the most significant hearing. And I think that George Knapp helped make it that. That's how I see it. Now, I just want to point one thing out here to close this up. Now, I've received some comments, and I've been receiving these kind of comments for a while now, but just recently I received more of them. It's with regard to George Knapp and other people, other big names in the UFO community who seem to ignore the Las Vegas alien incident, as well as other cases too. I mean, I remember when last year, I guess it was April of last year, when Scott Roeder and I did a show. We called it Vindication Day, and from that point on, we've found more evidence. That case, there's no question about it. There's other people that have been investigating this, like Chris Lathrop. There's a lot of different people out there, and a whole bunch of other people, right? A whole bunch of other people who are interested in getting to the truth, right? And there's no question about this. I mean, I just did a couple of shows just recently. One of them was called Escape from Las Vegas, and the other one was called Emergency Landing, and where I talked about this case again, laid out the evidence. And to this point, George Knapp, that's where he comes from. He's from Vegas, right? That's where this incident happened, and he's dismissed it. I have no explanation for that. I don't know what to say about it. Is it perhaps because this is just too fantastic even for someone like George Knapp? I mean, is it like, because it could be. I mean, the story. I mean, there's most of the comments I've received on this, right? When you look at in the comments section, most of them they're stunned. Finally, they're like, wow, this shows it. This proves it. There's no question about it. You get a couple of people though that they don't like it. They think, oh, this means nothing. I can't see anything. No, there's nothing there. That kind of stuff. I don't understand it. That Vegas case, as far as I'm concerned, proves that there's no question about it that we're not alone. I don't know why some of the bigger names aren't using this when they're talking about this subject and when they go to these hearings. Or I don't get it. I mean, that it's over. There's no more debate, right? There's no question there's something here. That case proves it. There's no doubt about it. There's other incidents as well that happen over the decades, but this one here, you have so many different elements to it that there's no escaping, right? There's no escaping the reality of what happened there. And we could see now, we can actually see creatures. We see them, the kind of creatures that people have been reporting over the years, but yet people like George Knapp, other people like Jeremy Corbell, Lou Elizondo, I haven't heard from any of these people with regard to this case. It seems like they're more interested in trying to prod the government to releasing the truth, to revealing the truth to the public about what's real, what they know about this, about UFOs and this NHI presence. But they don't use, to me, right? If you were to throw this into the Pentagon's face, right, the Vegas case stuff, like if that UAP caucus, right, there's a lot of people in Congress now who are very interested, and it's the only thing it seems that these people in Congress get along about, right, when it comes to this. They seems like a lot of them want disclosure. There's a few of them that seem to don't want it. They're receiving lots of money from the military-industrial complex for their campaigns, right? But outside of that, it seems like a lot of people are on the same page with this on both sides of the aisle. And I think if you were to present that Vegas case in a hearing to people in the Pentagon, have them come in and try to explain this, that's it. It's game over. It's game, set, and match. It's over. It's been over for a long time. But hey, I have no idea what people are thinking behind the scenes. I can't get into everyone's mind, and you could just reach your own conclusions with that. But besides that, I still think that this hearing was most certainly a step in the right direction, for sure. And George Knapp was a big part of that, for sure. Anyway, I just want to say this. I want to say thank you all for joining me today. Until next time.